Conservative radio host named Joe Miller had a scientist guest on by the name of William Briggs. Now, he's a statistician and adjunct professor at Cornell University. Now, they had a discussion about a recent UCLA study. This study sought to understand how the posterior medial frontal cortex influences things like ideology, specifically nationalism and religion. Now, part of what the study did is that they took transcranial magnets, and using those, the researchers say that they were able to target and temporarily shut down that region of the brain. Now, during this study, subjects were asked questions about death and to rate a negative essay about the United States they were told was written by an immigrant. The result of the magnetic destimulation of the area of the brain in question resulted in supposedly less belief in religion and a greater acceptance of immigrants. Now, these two, Joe Miller and William Briggs, they're going to talk about this, and they're going to talk about some of the dangerous implications. Take a listen.
The real troubling aspect of this is, why would they do such a study? Right. And there's two reasons, really. And the first is that academia is largely populated by progressives, leftists. Everybody knows this. It's not even a secret. And they're always wondering why people aren't like them. And so the second reason is there's become a huge industry in trying to explain the origins of religious belief. So they're always putting it down to things like either evolution caused some people to believe in God, or the brain itself is somehow causing people to believe in God, whereas people with more advanced and more enlightened brains are less likely to believe in God.
Well, part of the troubling aspect of this is kind of the underlying concern that something like this could be used to treat disorders. There's this increasing undertone that I've seen a number of articles over the last several months implying or suggesting that those that, for example, hold traditional views on family have some sort of mental disorder. Homophobia, for example, having some sort of a component that is a psychological disturbance of sorts. Do you see this as having any connection to that increasing tendency of some on the left to try to characterize those of traditional values as needing treatment?
It's not only I that see this, it's the authors of this study we're talking about. They make that very statement in their paper. What they're trying to do, they say, is to identify mechanisms or means to identify religious people who might commit, in their words, zealous acts. People who are predisposed to believe in God and therefore might do something that's in line with that belief that they don't like. And they thought they could somehow find these people in advance, and that might lead to, they didn't use the word treatment, but they hinted around it broadly enough. And like you said, this study is one of hundreds of similar such studies. This isn't the only one. There's many of them, and all of them seek to pathologize either standard traditional Christian beliefs, belief in God, or conservative beliefs.
Oh my God. They're going to target conservatives. Why would they target conservatives? Well, that's an interesting question, and one that actually Briggs sought to answer. And this gets even crazier. Take a listen to this.
And basically what they're doing is they're trying to sort of bring back eugenics, even in a way, because they're identifying what they say are biological constituents for belief. Therefore, they're able to test for these biological constituents that might make one more altruistic, or one might make one more open to sexual experimentation. You think I'm joking. Your readers might think I'm sort of being paranoid making this up, but no, this is exactly it. There was a story this week, too, just talking about the acceleration, that some employers are now asking for DNA samples, not just to detect medical or potential medical maladies, but to look for these kind of character traits they think they have identified that make one a lesser person.
When you look at the U.S. Constitution, the American political experiment based upon this idea of free exercise, faith, God, I mean, they've got to separate all this stuff out in order for them to carry on their agenda of just no parameters on sexual acts or behavior, the whole transgender crowd. I mean, they see their main opponent as being those of faith. And so obviously they're going to use any aggressive tactics they can to move forward that agenda. This is still minority opinion, though, right, in psychiatry and elsewhere?
I'd say no. I don't think it's minority opinion anymore.
That's frightening.
Wow. You know, this kind of reminds me of a psych class I took back in high school. Now, I was reading a specific chapter about a man who thought that the Soviet Union was beaming pro-communist messages straight into his brain. No, I'm serious. I'm serious, right? And the only way to stop it, to neutralize these commie signals into his brain, was to wrap his head in tinfoil. Yeah. Now, I laughed, right? Because I didn't think anybody would be this stupid, this paranoid. Now, unfortunately, I was wrong. People are that stupid. They really are. Now, look, this actually also might be a good example of mental illness, right? But look at what they said. Let's look at the breakdown of what they think. That this study is basically there to try to pick out ways to do eugenics programs so that the transgender crowd can wave around magnets and suck God out of your brain and make you love immigrants. They think this is some sort of program to eliminate Christianity and make people love immigrants. This is crazy. This is crazy stuff. This is insanity. I can't... Look, I don't understand the payoff here, right? From my opinion, I think that look, science found something interesting, right? That belief in God is linked to, ironically, heightened activity in a certain part of your brain. Is kind of ironic how more brain activity is required to believe in God. Maybe it's perhaps because you have to work your way through all the contradictions to find ways to suspend your beliefs so you can accept the fact that the Bible has 7-headed dragons in it. I don't know. Now, I guess sometimes more brain activity might be a bad thing. For example, studies have suggested that conservatives have much bigger amygdalas than liberals. The amygdala is the fear center of the brain. If you have a more active fear center, you're more afraid. You're more afraid all the time. Maybe that explains why conservative policies are, more targeted towards fear. Oh, the immigrants are coming after your jobs. ISIS is coming after you. They're coming for your guns. The government's coming to take your money. It sort of explains conservative ideology. They're coming after you. They're going to take your money through welfare. They're coming after you. It's that whole mindset, right? It sort of makes sense. Now, this specific experiment didn't actually have anything to do with the amygdala, but instead, as he mentioned, it temporarily shut down the posterior medial frontal cortex. Temporarily. Now, the issue here is that the key word is that it's temporary, right? The whole idea that transgendered folks are going to run around with magnets sucking God out of your brain is comical at best. Besides, if God was all powerful, well, he would just be like, oh, magnets, gone, don't work anymore. Or maybe he would just put himself back into your brain. I don't understand, right? Or he could smite everybody holding a magnet. Gone. This is just a type of over-the-top conspiracy-minded bullshit that happens whenever science finds something interesting about the human brain and how it works. Look, that's what science is supposed to do. They're supposed to look in to see how the brain works. And the more questions that you answer, the less ambiguity you have. Now, sometimes you can explore something and find even more questions, and that's great. That's what science is about. Science is about not just answering questions, but finding new questions to try and answer through experimentation. Now, this guy's a scientist, but he's like, experimentation, we're going down a bad road. We're looking at the brain. What we found, it's a bad thing. It means we're going to try to eliminate the belief in God of people to try to make it into a mental illness. Maybe some people will think that. And, look, maybe they will. I'm not somebody who thinks that way. I think it's perfectly fine, perfectly normal to think that maybe there's something bigger than you. I don't personally subscribe to that belief, but I also don't think that it's a mental illness. And this guy is essentially saying that leftists and progressives, well, that's what we think about all religious people. No, that's not what we think. It's a nice straw man you put up, but that's not the reality. In fact, there are a lot of leftists, a lot of progressives that are actually very religious. There are a lot of smart people who are very religious, people that I look up to, people that have done very, very good things for society, that have been very religious. but have also been forward thinking and progressive. As I said, it's a super nice straw man.